Welcome to Grinding the Data. My name is Kevin Scott. It's an honor to be back with you for another installment of the Expert Series. I have the honor today to chat with Pat Kerrane of NBC. Welcome, Pat.
Hey, thanks, Kevin.
It's definitely an honor to have you on. As I was just telling you, I've thought of a lot of your work for a few years now. You're also just fun to listen to on podcasts. You seem to have a cool vibe, so I thought it'd be fun to have you on and chat about some fantasy stuff. Right now, you're working for NBC. Before that, you were established the run. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and how long have you been in the fantasy space, like full time, or get it when you get your start there?
Full time, less than a year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was contributing to Establish a Run, but kind of doing freelance stuff basically, and then yeah, started with NBC full time last May.
That's
But
great.
I was been doing stuff for a while. I mean, I was with Rotoviz.
Mm-hmm.
Started writing for Rotoviz, I think, in 2014, maybe 2013, and then we did podcasts with them for a while. Me and Pete Overzet did the Fantasyland podcast, which is how we started working together.
Mm-hmm.
Been doing ship chasing for a number of years, so I've been doing fantasy football stuff for a long time. But yeah, I didn't convert to full time until last year.
Well, congratulations. That's a big shift. And I was just talking, when I talked with Denny, I definitely congratulate him on that. A lot of us are hopeful that one day is us. So super happy for you, man.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Were you doing some other job the same time you were doing fantasy on the side then for a while?
Yeah. I was a project manager doing energy efficiency, kind of basically like energy monitoring installations and helping businesses like reduce their load during peak hours of the summer.
Wow, that's a lot different. Are you missing that at all?
No, not really.
No.
I mean, I did it for like 10 years and I did enjoy it. But it's fun. It's fun to be doing the fantasy football stuff. And it's been like, I've been able to kind of dive really deep into a number of things. Like, I've been doing this in-season article, the walkthrough where I'm diving really deep, and I have so much more time to get into that stuff. That's been really rewarding. And then the rookie prospects was what I'm working on right now. And, just having all that time to dive even deeper has been it's been really nice.
That's cool. Yeah, well, maybe we'll have some time. I mean, I guess I can ask you now. I just got done myself diving into a bunch of the rookies. Are there any? We're not really talking about specifically today, but are there any rookies that really pop out to you that maybe you're higher on than most?
I think it's a fun wide receiver class. It's you don't have a Jamar Chase in this class, but you're rarely going to get a Jamar Chase. Like Jamar Chase's profile was exceptional, and we also knew at that time, that he's coming into the league, that the guy he had outproduced in Justin Jefferson the year before is a superstar. So
Right.
like you have this additional confirmation point that for that to happen in exactly that type of way is going to be so rare. But we do have some really good wide receiver prospects this year. I really like Treylon Burks. I'm not as concerned as some that he had like schemed touch. He did have schemed touches. He did have a lot of yak on screens, but he was also very productive in terms of yards after catch downfield. He was very efficient on his downfield targets. He didn't get as many as we'd like, but he had this incredible percentage of the Arkansas offense as a 3-year player. I mean, the upside on a player like that is like Des Bryant. It could be really, really exciting. So he's really exciting. I think Garrett Wilson is super exciting. I'm not quite as high on Drake London to have him like in the wide receiver one conversation, but I totally get why other people are psyched about him.
Right.
He's very exciting. I love Sky Moore. I think Sky Moore, the fact that he might get it's possible he goes in the late first round. I mean, yeah. I'm going to be very excited about him if he gets a first round stamp of approval.
I was shocked at his measurables, man. That super surprised me. Yeah, I thought he'd be slow.
I know. And, the word on the tape is very strong, and that those measurables, give scouts more confidence that they can trust the tape. And from an analytical perspective, just completely pops. He's going to be, he will go day one or day two. And at that point, he'll be the first non-Power 5 3-year prospect to be drafted in day one or two since Devontae Adams. So, you don't see a lot of early declares from these smaller programs. So it's like one of these things where we don't see a ton of non-power 5 guys as like fantasy stars, but it's just
Mm-hmm.
kind of rare that you get someone of his profile not in a big program. So he's really exciting. Jameson Williams, if he hadn't torn his ACL, I think there'd be people with him as their wide receiver 1, and that would be totally defensible.
Right.
So it's a very fun wide receiver class. And then I think I like Brees Hall and I like Kenneth Walker. And I like Rachaad White at running back. I
Yeah.
would put the first two guys, maybe they're each in their own tier in a way, but
Right.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty interesting class. And then the quarterback class, there's no consensus, but Malik Willis certainly has upside. So I think it's a pretty fun class overall.
Yeah, I think it is a fun class. I think it's a weird class, though. I mean, the way that there's no consensus both on quarterback, for me, I think tight end is very confusing.
Mm-hmm.
There's several guys that when I watch the tape, I like them better than Trey McBride. He's the kind of consensus one, but when I watch him, I'm just like, eh. I mean, I know he's got the athletic talent. He just looks like a fullback out there sometimes to me.
Yeah, I was assuming after the combine that he wasn't that athletic and was going to fall, and then he had a good pro day.
Yeah,
now maybe he's back up. So it's been kind of a roller coaster at tight end.
Right. Yeah, I agree on the wide receivers. I think that the big question mark for me on Sky Moore, just speaking of him, was that his look, like he looks a little not like a receiver. It almost reminded me of Debo when he was coming out. Like Debo looks like stocky, more like a running back. But obviously I guess that fits with him. I wonder if Sky Moore would do some of that from the backfield stuff.
I could see that. Golden Tate has been the guy that's kind of come to mind a little bit with him, where you're getting like, he's kind of a slot. Like if someone decided he's a slot receiver, he could totally be a slot receiver. If someone's, wants to put him outside for 65% of snaps, I think he could totally do that too. Yep. He's got the versatility. He's going to do most of his damage in the intermediate level. He can be used on some shorter stuff. You could totally use him on some screens, jet sweeps, that type of stuff. He's not really a deep guy, but maybe 2-3 years from now he develop it. Yeah, because he's got the speed. So maybe he's like a Stephon Diggs type, where he kind of starts in the slot and then works his way into a number 1 wide receiver type of role. But I think even if not, he's going to be like a reliable, productive, kind of like, a wide receiver, fantasy wide receiver 20 type of guy. Like he does seem like, you're getting something out of him. Maybe Robert Woods, a little bit like that.
Yeah. It's super funny. I'll have to send you the link so you can see I'm not making it up. I just published my my thoughts on the rookie class and my comps. I couldn't decide on a comp for Sky Moore. I was torn between Golden Tate and Deebo Samuel. So I guess we both saw that Golden Tate little flare in there. It's interesting.
And like analytically is pretty similar too.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't look at that. I just was watching it and trying to see, who does this guy remind me of? I think the stockiness, but the quickness reminded me of him. So anyway, yeah. So I'm gonna go through, like I have with the other experts, just ask you some questions in general, just about looking back at the 2021 season, looking forward, kind of your thoughts. I know you play in a lot of leagues, like I do, and I don't know how many, but I know you're in the high stakes streak.
I don't know.
So.
I don't know how many either at this point.
Too many to count. Yeah. So we'll talk through some stuff, and then we'll finish with an exercise. It'll be fun. So my first question just had to do with that you do draft a lot, and just thinking through draft strategy. I know you guys on Ship Chasing talk a lot about draft strategy. And as you look back at last season and think about your drafts and just draft strategy in general, what do you think was maybe the best or most effective way? I know there's not a most effective way, but what for you seemed to work the best as far as, zero RB, heavy RB, hero RB, whatever?
Our best team was actually kind of like a hyper fragile team in a way. It wasn't exactly like hyper fragile. In a best ball draft, you'd take like 4 running backs and stop. This was a managed team. But we did Jonathan Taylor in the first round. We had the 112, so we got Taylor and Kelsey. Then we got Swift in the at the end of the 4th round, because it was it's 3rd round reversals as an NFC team. Okay. So we got DeAndre Swift, and then we didn't take another running back until just flyer territory. So we hit on those 2 guys, and then we happened to also hit on Debo. We hit on Jamar Chase.
That helps.
We got AJ Brown. Yeah, we had Kelsey holding on tight end spot. So, but I do feel like last year was a year where you kind of had to hit on the right guys. And, you could kind of say that every year, but last year was weird where Debo and Chase were spaced. Like, you could actually get
Right.
like Taylor, Swift, Debo, Chase
And
on the
Cup
same
too.
team. And Cup, yeah, Cup was you can kind of, because the guys were spaced out and they were available in the middle rounds, and if you had like conviction on them, you could have gotten like basically all of them.
Right.
So it does feel a little bit to me like there wasn't a dominant strategy last year, and you could basically have built however you wanted. I think you get some advantages by just kind of understand. Like, I do think that, we were basically, even though we took 2 running backs early, we're still kind of like using the principles of, fragility at the running back position to like, we had made our bet. Like, we
Right.
were going to win the league if Swift and Taylor hit, which they did, and we won the league. Or, we were going to be up a creek
Big
if
trouble.
one of them
Yeah.
did not hit. Yeah. And we were just going to have to figure it out on the waiver wire. And of course, like, Swift dealt with injury, so we did have to figure it out on the waiver wire a bit. We were like filling in Alex Collins and stuff. You're grinding away and you're getting fill-in points. You're going to have to do that even if you hit, because you're never going to get, 16, 17 games or whatever.
Right.
So, but yeah, I mean, generally, I do like zero running back, and I like the principles of zero running back. You're just kind of thinking through the running back position as like, I'm drafting this position for upside. I know that it can go wrong very quickly, and not just because guys get hurt, but because, so much of why we're drafting these guys is based on these projected touches, and that can go away. And we're not necessarily drafting these guys because we think they're the most talented players on the board. We're drafting them because of projections, and, that projection is pretty fragile. And, you just kind of go through and, look at the guys who like you're jamming in DFS week 2 versus like week 14, it can be pretty different.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't think like last year really progressed us much in terms of
Overall strategy.
the strategy, but I do like the hyper fragile strategy, especially for best ball. Like, you can get your running backs taken care of. And I kind of like doing maybe 2 early, and then I'll get 2 more in like, rounds 8 or 9, or maybe 1 in that range and 1 later. So I'm not like just jamming all my running backs in the early rounds, because, the wide receivers in like rounds 3 through 5 have been pretty strong. Running backs, they're usually pretty weak. So,
right.
But yeah, I think you want to be comfortable with a variety of strategies, I think is fair to say.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Do you find, or I should ask, do you play in any contained leagues that are not part of larger contests?
Yes. Yeah, I have like, I'm still in like one kind of home league auction thing.
Yeah. I was just
got
curious if
dynasty leagues
those
like that.
kinds. Yeah, I was just curious if like the contained leagues, like as far as draft strategy, changes anything, because you're saying like basically you made a bet. If you hit, you hit. If you don't, you don't. And a lot of that I feel like is based on being in these large contests where you have to hit a perfect team to win it or close to it, Whereas if you're in a contained league, does it change anything for you?
The NFC team that I was talking about, that was actually a contained league. It was a 5K. It was just a 5K 12-team league.
Okay.
And I mean, we hit like enough to the point where we were kind of wishing it wasn't.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think, I mean, like, it's a 1 in 12 proposition. It's still a GPP, even if you're in a contained league. Like, you still do want to kind of swing for the fences a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I just feel like for me, for some reason, when I'm in a contained league, I feel like I want to play it a little safer, not a lot safer. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But as far as like making sure I have a couple playable backs, I'm much more willing to wait in a big contest, because it's like I'll find somebody on the wire, and
right.
I
think there's something to that for sure. Where like, you can kind of play, and especially in these, like, the FFPC, where it does tend to be a bit more running back heavy. It's like, if you're able to get into, prime position in the overall main event playoffs, and you have this structure that's not particularly common among those teams, I mean, that's an advantage.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Whereas that doesn't do you any good in a contained league. You just want to score the most points and win every week.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting. As far as like you said, I think that's a smart thing that we really didn't move strategy ahead, and I think part of that is because of those guys that popped in the middle rounds. But do you think looking forward, as you're, I don't know how much drafting you've done with best ball or anything so far, but how are you thinking about the various positions in 2022? I know you have to be flexible, but is there any sort of strategy? I mean, besides just I like best ball and then you let the board fall, or is there anything you're thinking about?
I mean, I'm definitely, we'll get to it, but I think tight end is really interesting this year. I think the running backs is like, I think running backs are really interesting this year because there's kind of this glut of running backs that like no one really knows what to do with, that like, the kind of the guys who are like sort of aging out in, Cook, Kamara, Mixon, Fournette. It's like everyone's kind of like, yeah, all right, I'll draft this guy.
Right.
I kind of need a running back here. I see the upside, I see the downside. It's not a first round pick. These guys are falling, but they're still kind of in a premium. I mean, definitely still a premium pick to get those guys. But I don't know. I feel like maybe we'll all have stronger takes on them right now. But at the moment, it's like I know these guys have jobs.
Right.
I don't know who else has jobs later, and I'm not as psyched about the wide receivers in this range. It doesn't feel like the round 2 wide receivers are super exciting.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Like last year, it was like those guys were all hot, and the second and third is sort of like, like T. Higgins, like he doesn't like. I got to grab this guy because you got Chase. It feels like all of them are like that, doesn't it?
Yeah, a bit. And then you've got Adams and Tyreek Hill,
Right, falling a little
getting
bit.
removed kind of from the upper tier.
Mhm.
So it does feel like wide receiver. There's like 3 guys, and then it kind of falls off a bit. And so then that leaves you with this like group of running backs where you're kind of like, I guess this frees me up later to hammer wide receiver. So it's helpful to grab this guy now.
But then
yeah,
you start thinking about the dead zone stuff, and
right.
is this guy going to get hurt? And like you were saying, tight end. Are you thinking about certain tight ends trying to grab in the top 3 rounds?
Yeah, and I've been doing the underdog superflex drafts, and there's
Okay.
in the 4th round, you're pretty frequently seeing a tight end available. There's sometimes in the 5th round of those, and those leagues, like they basically have one less extra wide receiver in them, and so I think the starting lineup is more important in those leagues. So I've been prioritizing tight end there.
Yeah.
But in general, I like taking a tight end early in best ball. That's and I like taking tight end early in every league, to be honest.
Right.
I mean, I don't force it, but it is one of the things I like to do.
So how do you feel about, I know that generally what you're saying is you like to hammer receivers early, maybe grab one running back or whatever, maybe, but go fragile. You like to take a tight end early. How do you feel about quarterback? I mean, is that something you typically hit in like that 4th to 8th round range, or do you normally wait? How do you normally handle it?
It does feel like it's really changed over the last couple of years, where
Right.
you have to have the ability to compete, at least somewhat, with those elite quarterbacks. I don't like taking kind of whoever the market has decided is the most likely of those
Right.
rushing quarterbacks to be the guy. Like, I
Mhm.
don't think we're going to be very good at that, in the same way that
We
like,
haven't been.
no, yeah. And the late round quarterback strategy, one of the reasons it was so effective is that, we're not very good at predicting passing efficiency and, passing touchdowns and everything. And who's going to stumble into that incredible passing season, which
Right.
is still true. But we now have like 2 classes of quarterbacks where, one guy, one class can pick up a ton of rushing touchdowns and rushing yards, and the other does not. But still within those tiers, I think we're not going to be incredible at, projecting which of those guys just goes off.
Yeah, I agree.
So I kind of generally like to be sort of at the end of the tier there. And in best ball, it's kind of nice to get one of those guys, and then you can get,
a couple others,
or one other.
Yeah.
But you don't have to get necessarily 2 from that tier. But you could do like a Russell Wilson and a Jalen Hurts, as like kind of the very last guys or something like that.
Right. Yeah, I certainly used to be trying to be one of the very last to get a quarterback, and it does feel like the last couple of years it's just totally shifted. Not that you can't win with like I don't even know an example.
Kirk
Just a lower
Cousins.
Kirk Cousins, thank you. Average quarterback, you can win, but man, it just feels like he's going to give you those 10-point weeks and crush you.
Yeah, and I mean, it makes me a little nervous to go after like Tom Brady, even Matthew Stafford a little bit, like that, because you are counting on them to just have that incredible passing season, and they certainly have like much higher odds than the normal
Right.
quarterback of having that,
But no rushing.
but no rushing. You don't have anything to fall back on if that doesn't come through for you.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I saw
do
in the
prefer to get like a Kyler, you know.
yeah. Yeah, I was just looking at the ADP earlier, and I saw where Allen was going, and I was just like, no, I'm not going to have any if he goes there.
Right.
Even in like football guys championships or main event, we're probably looking at third round, and I can't bring myself to do it.
Yeah, I'm out on that because stuff really falls off. You know, in the like the third round is a very strong round
Mm-hmm.
for the skill positions.
Yep.
And if you can get like the fifth or sixth round, Dak has been a guy that I frequently drafted.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't work out so well last year, but you know, I'll go back to that. Well, like
Yeah,
Dak is
he's going to
a
be
very
chucking it.
strong fantasy quarterback, I think. Yeah.
Yep.
So like the cheaper guys that still have like, you know, very, very strong upside. And I don't think you have to get like the quarterback one.
Right.
You
I
just need
agree.
to be getting a guy who's kind of keeping you within striking distance of the quarterback one.
Yeah, 25-point, average is
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Looking back at the rookie class, I know you're studying the rookies now, but looking at the rookie class from 2021, does anything strike you about that class? Like after seeing a year of their careers, anybody jump out or, think that anyone you think, this is a guy we should be watching to kind of pop this year?
Well, I mean, like my mea culpa in a way is on Kadarius Toney, where I mean, Kadarius Toney was like just a very bad selection in the first round based on everything we knew at that time. But
Right.
what he's shown as a rookie and the fact that he was a first round pick, I think we should be pretty excited about him entering his second year, even though he didn't do a number of the things as a prospect that we were looking for to kind of predict what he might do as a rookie. But like, it was a small sample. He only ran 196 routes as a rookie, but he had 2.14 yards per route run, which is excellent.
Mm-hmm.
And he also only played 60% of his snaps in the slot. I thought it was pretty interesting to see him, being able to get open on the outside when like we thought entering, when he entered the league that he might just be like a gadget player.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons I was so down on him is like on top of him, not being very productive at Florida, being a 4-year player, really not being efficient in his final season in terms of yards per out run at Florida. Although he was somewhat efficient in his early career, he just, kind of like, it's like this felt like this manufactured senior breakout, which has been like one of the worst signals that you can follow for these prospects. But he was getting open on the outside. Like he's not just a gadget player. I don't think he kind of feels like to me, like a little Deontay Johnson-esque,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe a little more explosive.
Right.
And
Really
now he's
so
got
shifty. I mean, it's just crazy how
so
he can
shifty.
make people miss. Yeah.
You've got Daboll there, obviously. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have much faith in Daniel Jones at all. I don't think Daniel Jones is good. But what Daniel Jones is bad at is going to hurt Kenny Galladay.
Right.
And it's going to hurt Darius Slayton. I don't think that Daniel Jones, just kind of being like mentally unwilling to throw the deep ball is going to impact Kadarius Toney at a 6.58.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he'll be just fine. And, they'll, I think, understand that he's one of their more dynamic players. So, I don't the thing that I like about Toney too is he's not all that expensive in drafts. Like if he was like really hyped and people were just assuming that he was going to build on this small sample kind of near breakout as a rookie, then I would be pretty skeptical. But you don't have to. I mean, you're taking him like just ahead of Brandon Ayuk. You're taking him ahead of the top rookies, or sometimes just behind like the Traylon Burks and the Garrett Wilson tier. You're getting him by Rashad Bateman, who I really like too. But Rashad Bateman had a little bit of a red flag rookie year. I mean, he was not efficient down the stretch. He looked like he was going to come on. Then his routes didn't really materialize. Then his yards per out run dropped off. He's still in a tier, like a tier of yards per out run where like DeAndre Hopkins was as a rookie. You could see a big time second year breakout, but I think more likely he'll probably be good but not great this year, and then we're looking for a third-year breakout. Like that's kind of seems to be the trajectory he's on because he has target competition on Mark Andrews and
Right.
Marquise Brown that's not going to go away, and their passing volume will probably decline this year once they get their running game back up and running with Dobbins back. So he strikes me as someone that's like, I'm still drafting Bateman, but if you told me like a year ago that I would be like drafting Bateman and Tony like pretty much interchangeably in the same round this year, I wouldn't have believed you. So, I think, and by the way, on that small sample size with Tony, his efficiency was good enough that you can like tack on another 100 routes and, just say like he just stood there for those routes and, his efficiency is still like really good, like really like what, where you'd want to be targeting this guy in his second year. So
it was surprising. I mean, I thought he had that kind of juice, but I did not think he was going to be that good at running routes. Yeah. And getting open.
Yeah.
That was impressive.
Me neither.
Yeah.
And I like Elijah Moore a lot. I think he still feels like maybe a little underdrafted relative to his ceiling.
Although I was going to say he's sort of like the inverse of Tony, where like they kind of did the same thing as far as popped, but for a short time. But Moore is going like 2-3 rounds before Tony. So it sort of seems like he's being drafted maybe where he should be, where Tony isn't, or maybe he's being overdrafted. But then you just said maybe underdrafted. So
I think maybe a little underdrafted because he was a very strong prospect.
Oh yeah, no, so I love his talent. Yeah,
when he, you get him coming in and like building on a prospect. Like I think Tony is probably a touch underdrafted, but like if he got much more expensive, I think I'd start to get nervous about it. It's more that I'm like excited to be drafting him where he is, because anytime like these guys that I don't think I'll be drafting and I end up drafting them, that kind of like makes me happy. But Moore is someone that I was pretty into as a prospect, and then immediately flashes like real upside. The problem with him is obviously the quarterback play. So if it gets much more expensive, then we'll have to cool off. But but he looks like they got really, really strong potential to become a fantasy difference maker type of wide receiver.
Yeah, it's interesting because you mentioned with Bateman, the big concern being Marquise Brown, and I wonder is Marquise Brown, in your view, really that much better than Corey Davis? I mean, like they both are kind of like good but not great, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Moore has at this point given us more reason to believe that he can dictate what
be
happens.
The man.
Yeah. Where like Bateman, he wasn't really. I mean, if anyone's dictating targets on that team, it's Mark Andrews right now.
Right. When you didn't have Lamar, that's the only other excuse I give Bateman for a lot of the season. But yeah, I mean, I like all of them. Do you have a thought on Devonta Smith? I know it's hard to get a read because of the way they don't pass very often, but what are your thoughts on him?
I'm not as excited about Devonta Smith. I didn't like him as much as a prospect. Another 4-year guy who didn't really have the production we were looking for until he was a senior. And now he did win the Heisman as a senior. So probably, that's not usual. But he wasn't like awesome as a rookie. He got used very much as a deep threat, 14.9 ADOT. That wasn't necessarily how he profiles coming in. He wasn't like a pure deep threat at Alabama. And I find that like a little disappointing that he's getting used that way, because I'm not sure that's like the strength of his game. He can do it for you, but and it's also like in that offense, I don't think we necessarily are dying to have Jalen Hurts, pure deep threat.
Right.
So I wonder if they bring in some additional help, maybe that helps him, particularly if they were to bring in like an actual deep threat. Or maybe Quez Watkins takes a step forward in that regard and they can use him on some more intermediate stuff. So I'm not like out on him at all, but I'm not like as excited about him as like Elijah Moore.
Yeah. One other guy I don't know what to do with. I'll ask you about Rondale Moore. Your thoughts on him?
I'm still in on Rondale Moore again, because the price to get him is not all that high. People seem pretty scared off by the rookie season, which I get. Like it was a pretty bad rookie season, in terms of just him getting on the field. But he had 1.65 yards per route run, which is like totally fine. The issue is like they were playing Antoine Wesley instead
Right.
of Rondale Moore, which is a pretty big deal. But I think what was really happening is they were playing Christian Kirk in the slot
Right.
where he is best.
Hmm.
This is, DeAndre Hopkins is hurt. Your best wide receiver at this point is Christian Kirk. He clearly has shown, over 4 years, he played 2 outside in year 2 and year 3 and was not very good. He was good as a rookie playing in the slot, and he had been very good last year playing in the slot. So they're playing him in the slot. If they play Rondale Moore, they have to play him in the slot. So then you're bumping Christian Kirk basically out of position. That keeps Wesley off the field. You got AJ Green, Kirk on the outside, and Moore in the slot. But I think they thought we're better off if we got Kirk in the slot and Wesley and Green on the outside. So
Right.
I don't necessarily view it as like Wesley was playing over Moore. I think they were prioritizing their best wide receiver and what he does best. He's obviously gone now. So you're going to see a ton of Rondale Moore in the slot. He did have a 1.3 ADOT.
I know.
Which
I was, for a while, I thought it might be negative ADOT. I mean, he was almost never catching a pass past the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, so that's not great. But he was pretty efficient, and he'll see, I think, a lot more work this year.
I think it just comes down to Kirk being gone. I mean, that's really how I
Yeah.
feel about it. Yeah, he's going to get so much more.
I wonder if his price moves up to the point where it'll be less easy to draft him. But he's pretty easy to draft right now.
Yeah, I think because of the negativity coming out of last year, I think a lot of people will miss that Kirk being gone, how much it helps him. So, yeah, I think I'm in on him. I can't remember. Are there any backs we should discuss from last year that?
Well, Javante's he's gonna get
He'll
hyped.
pop. You would assume.
Yeah.
We just hope Melvin's gone.
Najee, I think. To me, I think I actually feel a little bit better about Najee than I did last year because I'm like pretty skeptical of this rookie's going to be an every down workhorse, because we actually don't see that a lot.
Right.
And the fact that we did see it, I'm like, well, he's definitely going to be a workhorse in year 2 now.
Right.
And he was, I wasn't as high on him as a prospect as a lot of other people, but I didn't think he was like a bad prospect. I just thought he was kind of limited in, not a breakaway type of guy. Basically everything we now know is about, he's the guy that can get a ton of touches and he can be used as a receiver, but he's not an incredible receiver. And he's not going to deliver a ton of big plays. Like Najee's like basically exactly who I thought he was, but he's getting a lot of work.
When you're getting every down, it makes a difference.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, well, that's all helpful info. As you start thinking about redraft or dynasty drafts this season, how do you go about ranking players? What is that process for you? Do you like go through and do like full projections, or do you just kind of tweak the ADP, or like do it on feel? How do you do that for drafts?
For my dynasty stuff, I go through and I need to actually am due to go through my dynasty ranks over at NBC and do a pre-draft update. But I'll go through and like do like 200, top 200 ranks for those. I don't usually have redraft ranks. I pretty much am going off of like there's projections that I trust, and there's also ADP, my own research in terms of like second year breakouts, the rookies that I like, some of the veterans that I think have potential to fall off, and then also just like diversification. If it's like I've drafted this guy a bunch here, I'll try to mix it up a bit. So that's like a little bit somewhat more feel based, I think, for me. And then one thing I also try to keep in mind too is like if I'm doing, especially in something like the main event that opens up, fairly early, or any of these best ball tournaments, like just kind of understanding where other people were getting players previously in that tournament. And also like kind of trying to predict the market a little bit. Like, this player's the type of guy who tends to go screaming up boards.
Right.
So if I can get him cheaper now, or vice versa, like hopefully I was loading up on this guy in the 4th round. Now he's going at the, in the early 3rd round, I can chill out and mix up my exposure a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you go into a draft then with, like just a ranked list, or do you have tiers, or how do you approach that?
I'm mostly drafting, like looking at the ADP and then thinking structurally.
Yeah.
But like,
so it's literally like feel like you're not like crossing guys off a list. You're just watching it and the board really well, and you go from there.
Yeah. By the time we get up to like the high stakes drafts, I've drafted like so many leagues. Like I'm
Right.
drafting best balls, right? I got like 6 slow drafts going right now.
So you have a really good feel for the board.
Yeah. I haven't done the FFPC ones really yet, but like by the time we get, into mid-August, I'll have done a bunch of those best ball and football guys and main event drafts.
Yeah.
The first main event draft, the first one, Pete and I will do a slow draft usually to kick it off. Last year, yeah, me, Pete, and Gretch all did a slow draft last year to kind of kick off our season, and that you're putting a lot more time into each pick,
Right.
you
Yep.
know.
Really think
But
through
kind
every
of as
single one.
exactly, yeah. And so that it's like it's not just a list; it's like everything I can,
Yeah. Do you
Google and
find like
research.
then you're sort of basing your next drafts off of that one when you have one that start off with and you really think through the picks? You kind of think it back to that board.
Yeah, you kind of you kind of use some of that research, use some of like the lessons of that draft, and
Hmm.
also just kind of the ADP in general. But you get a feel like, in one of our early drafts, we wanted T Higgins, and we wanted DJ Moore, and we were considering like, okay, how do we get, like, what do we do here? Like, is there any chance Higgins gets back to us at the end of the uh fifth, I think is what we were banking on, which was like very, very low chance of that happening. We ended up taking Amari Cooper at like the 311, assuming that DJ Moore would get back to us at the 402, and he didn't.
Oh,
And then T Higgins didn't get back to us. So like, it's like you kind of go into the next draft like a little bit less willing to make the gamble
right.
of, your guys kind of getting back to you and just like prioritizing taking them, or had that happened the way we wanted, maybe would be less likely to reach for our
Right.
guys. But
Yeah, it's interesting how all that plays in psychologically.
yeah, yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. I guess one other question I had about just this coming season is: are there a few players that early in these best balls, or just as you're thinking through the board, that you are much or significantly higher on than most people, or significantly lower on than most people?
Uh, I don't just like rookies or just anybody.
No, just anybody. Like I guess in the best balls, guys that you see yourself taking a lot because you're higher than most, or just totally don't have any of.
I think AJ Brown is probably one guy that I'm much higher on than consensus.
Hmm.
He feels to me like, there's that tier of three: Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, and Jamar Chase. Um, and then we kind of had, Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams are now much bigger question marks than we would
Hmm.
have. And so it's like, who can I go to war with here at wide receiver that's actually has a chance of like putting up a overall wide receiver one season?
Right.
And AJ Brown like really does feel like that guy to me, where there's not strong target competition there. He struggled with injuries last year, but was still very good, and is like, after this year, if it goes the way I'm hoping it might, we could easily be like he's the best wide receiver in the league.
Right.
He's had, since entering the league, 2.42 yards per out run, then 2.67, then 2.72. I mean, the guy's like just been an absolute superstar since
Yeah.
entering the league. And right now it feels like, no, the best wide receiver in the league is one of Cooper, Chase, or Jefferson. But Brown, it really just comes down to like, does he get more volume than he has? Because no one's doubting his skill set, his yards after catch ability,
Right.
his downfield ability. I mean, he's pretty incredible. So I really like AJ Brown, and it feels like he's getting drafted much later than I'm comfortable taking him. I'm comfortable reaching on him by like a number of picks. And even like Stephon Diggs, I like a lot, but just in terms of the target competition between like him and Brown, like it's harder for me to see Stephon Diggs being like the wide receiver one than
Right.
AJ Brown, because you really just need, like imagine like kind of a Ravens situation, where they're just like they're forced to pass. Maybe the defense isn't quite as good next year. We've already saw Henry get hurt. They go to the pass a little bit more. AJ Brown's healthier, and the passing attempts spike up in a way that we can't project. We would never project, but we know weird stuff happens all the time in the NFL. It's like that one thing happens. If the pass attempts spike for whatever reason, he could just crush.
Yeah, I guess I would just in comparison with Diggs, and it's interesting because I have them right next to each other in my rankings right now. I think the biggest question mark is just can Brown's pie get anywhere close to Diggs's pie, like as an offense? Like they pass the ball so stinking much in Buffalo that he doesn't have to be the
He'll
only
never
guy.
get as close. Yeah, they'll never be the Bills. But it's just more
but even
about
if he's
like
40, even if he's 40% of of their targets,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like would that equal to 25% of Buffalo's targets for Diggs? I mean, they're probably at the same number almost, But,
in most outcomes, that's probably right. I do think like Baltimore, it does like give me some hope in a way where you did see them. They had so many more passing plays than the year before. Just because of some injuries and because their defense, because people were able to pass all over them.
Mm-hmm. I'm really interested in that. And you mentioned that earlier. I wonder if Baltimore, they said before last season, we want to be more pass heavy. We want Lamar to throw it downfield more. And then they did, but it was like, is that due to injury or because their defense, everyone was hurt or what? I'm very curious to see if they're more like 55% pass plus. All those guys, the receiver changes everything for those receivers.
It really does. Yeah. I'm hoping their defense isn't, sorry, Ravens fans, but I'm hoping your defense isn't good.
Who do you root for?
I don't have a team.
Okay. I just was curious if it played into your team. You're just purely for fantasy. I hope your defense stinks.
That's right.
All right. Just a couple more questions here, then we'll do this exercise to close out. Something I've asked every expert. Basically, just the first question was, is there anything you've learned this season? It could be personally or professionally, anything that you would say, I look back at this, I know it's been a weird time for all of us, but I look back this year and I've definitely learned this thing.
Well, I got a dog about a year ago. So, raising a puppy has its lessons. Some real joy in that, he's great. But also like definitely has trained me to kind of like be a bit more patient and kind of that like stop and think through thing. Think through the problem. Like if I'm clearly about to leave and he has realized like, oh, it's the time of day where I'm going to the gym or whatever. And he knows, I'm going to ask him to go to his pen. He'll often like just kind of lay down and like roll over to be like, I'm not going to do what you want, but you're the boss. It's like,
I submit to you.
I submit, but also I won't do what you're about to ask me to do. That's so, funny. You can like go pick him up and put him in his pen, but that accomplishes nothing. Or you can like put like a little treat trail down. You can outsmart this animal and get him to do what you want, and he will do it willingly. Like you don't need to, you can get him to move his legs to where you want him to go. Like
definitely more patience involved, right?
Yeah, it's patience, and then it's like thinking through. Like we take him to the park, and he's pretty well behaved at the park, but he loves balls. Like if we bring a ball and he's got the ball, he's like, I have the ball, so what on earth could you possibly have that's better than this? Like we'll bring like chicken, like chunks of chicken, and he's like, yeah, great. I don't care about that at all. I have a ball. So it's like, that's what great. Could we do? Well, you bring another ball. If you have another ball, then he's like, oh, I definitely want that. That's a ball. So there's like always a solution to this if you just kind of think through it,
That's great.
And don't get frustrated. So it's been like a nice lesson in just like not letting yourself get frustrated.
Yeah, that's good. I like it. I guess I don't know if you'll ever have children, but that is definitely preparing you for children, if so, because the psychological figuring out how to make them do what you want is almost all parenting. How about for our listeners? I know you've been successful playing fantasy and you think about it a ton. So if our listeners, they want to get better, they want to play against stronger players, or enter a big contest, or just win their home league, what is one way that they can really improve in your view?
I would say co-manage. If you're co-managing, there's I think a number of advantages. First of all, you're gonna have more fun. I just think it's more fun because you're kind of sharing the excitement, you're sharing the pain with a buddy. Yeah, you also are getting to talk through some of these key decisions, which can be
Hmm.
helpful in like understanding your own thought process, and making
Right.
pushing yourself to like do a little bit more research about why you think what you think, not just kind of going on gut, but like actually, you know, decide making a decision that's based on evidence.
Hmm.
And you're getting someone else's thoughts and opinions and ideas so that you're not just kind of making the same decision over and over. You're gonna naturally diversify. You're gonna be exposed to different ways of thinking about these players. So I think it's like a really productive way of kind of getting better at fantasy, um, because you can't close out other opinions when you literally have to
Right.
come to a consensus with someone else.
Yeah.
And that's been kind of the journey of like, as I've gotten more into high stakes, done that with co-managing with Pete Overzet, Ben Gretsch, Mike Leone co-managed the NFC team that I was mentioning earlier with me and Ben. I just think so. It's not even just limited to one. I think if you do like a team with 2 or 3 other people, that can be really, really fun, and also a good way to just kind of level up.
That's awesome. Very good advice. That's something no one else has said. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And I agree. I like playing with a partner or partners. I don't think I've actually ever done with 3, but I've done with one other person several times. My big challenge is just splitting up the workload
Mm-hmm.
and agreeing. When you like if there's trading in a league, I find it very difficult because I'm a trader. I love to make moves, and a lot of guys just are nervous to do that.
Yeah.
But even picking up guys, like how much do you spend? I know I've heard you guys process that on ship chasing, like how much you want to spend on certain guys, and it's just you're right though. You have to work through it. It changes your viewpoint on things.
And you can do all that stuff in a number of different ways. Like, there's some teams where we're kind of as a group going through and making like consensus bids for waiver wire stuff. We did a penta managed team. There were 5 of
My
us,
goodness,
which is probably a little too much. I would say
you're
maybe
too
4 is
many.
the ideal
Yeah.
max, but it works. It works. I think we maybe won that league. But we had Hassan Rahim managed our. He would kind of put in the first run of waivers
Oh,
and
okay,
basically be like, "What do you guys think?" And
that's good.
that can be super helpful too. So if you have someone willing to take the lead on waivers, that's awesome. But you can also, battle it. It's like really just, how many leagues do you have? How involved do you want to be in
Right.
that type of stuff? Yeah.
Yep. That's good. All right, that was awesome thoughts, man. I appreciate it. We're going to finish with a little exercise here. I hope this will be fun. We each ranked our top 40 players or so, and we're basically just going to go back and forth and see if there's a player that's drafted way before or after. You have them on your board. It's probably just going to be before that we notice, but we can discuss that. So, yeah, we'll just go back and forth. You can start. Who are you picking if you have the first pick in the draft?
I'm picking Jonathan Taylor right now. And this is a tight end premium draft,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Um, yeah, I'm taking Jonathan Taylor. I totally get the argument for CMC, but I don't know. I think Taylor might have an additional tier that he can reach in terms of what he's doing as an NFL player. Just immensely talented in a really good situation.
Okay. Um, I would go Cup at number 2.
Oh wow! All right,
Far ahead where you have him.
a little bit. Yeah, I have him number 4.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah,
but
I mean, I just feel like
I get it.
yeah, obviously what he did last year, but I just don't feel like the competition there for targets has changed much. If anything, it's probably gone more in his favor with Woods leaving. Um, Maybe not. They have added, but yeah, I just think it's got that connection, breakfast connection, whatever they call
He definitely does. I mean, he was
it.
just dominant.
Who would you go after if those guys are off the board?
CMC.
Okay. Yeah, I have him a little lower. Are you, I guess, just not overly concerned with the lack of a quarterback or, the injury history?
I mean, it's definitely a concern, the injury history. It's not going to be an efficient offense, but they're just going to throw a ton of balls to Christian McCaffrey. Like,
Yeah.
in terms of, he could put up like 28 points per game this year just because of the way PPR scoring works.
Right. No, I love him. And I just worry about that stuff. The next guy I would actually take is Kelsey in tight end premium. I think with Hill leaving, he's going to see more targets than he did last year. Obviously, he's awesome.
That's the other guy I had over Cup.
Okay. So he was right there with you. So who would you go next with those guys going?
Jefferson.
Okay. Interesting. And I had Jefferson over Chase, but then I swapped it recently. Why do you have Jefferson over Chase?
I'm getting a little bit excited about the Vikings offense relative to where they were last year. You know, you're getting, I think, a pretty big increase in passing attempts. I think you're going to get an increase in passing efficiency, a better design passing game that's designed more around the quarterback. You're also having Adam Thielen, I think, showed some real decline last year. I think that's, I don't think he's reversing that. And a pretty sharp OC, former OC, now head coach, that I think will design the offense around Justin Jefferson, design the passing offense around him, and just extremely, extremely talented. I don't tend to get like too wrapped up in target competition in general, because I think for the most part, these elite wide receivers are going to drive the targets to themselves. Like it's not something I think it tends to get a bit overrated. But if we want like the wide receiver one, I do think that having T. Higgins there is a little bit harder for Chase to just have the absolute mind melting type of season than it is for Jefferson, who, I think Thielen potentially could be in that true sweet spot where he's just good enough to prevent the defense from totally keying on Jefferson, but not nearly good enough to really eat into his target share.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think probably as I'm going back and forth, I think it has a lot to do with the quarterback, just trusting Burrow more, but I do worry about Higgins. The next guy I would take is actually Derrick Henry. So I don't know how far ahead of 80 or your list that is. I know it's a little ahead of ADP.
It's a bit ahead of where I have him.
Who would be your next guy?
Mark Chase.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I was Chase. Yeah, because Chase and Jefferson were right together for me. I should have said Chase. Yeah. So who would be next after Chase for you?
I'll take Eckler.
Okay. Yeah, and I had Henry then Eckler, so we're right there. I had at the last ADP I looked at, Eckler was like top 5, so I had him down at 9, I think, or 8, which is a lot lower than ADP. But
I'm like a little lower on him, but it's because I want all 3 of the wide receivers. After the top 2 running backs, I want all 3 of the wide receivers, and I would take Kelsey as well.
Okay, yeah. All right, so after Henry and Eckler, I would go Najee. Like you said, I was not big on Najee last year, but just how hard it is to find 3 down backs, I would go ahead and grab him at that point late in the first.
I'll take Dalvin Cook.
Okay.
Yeah, dude, my excitement about the Vikings.
I have Cook way down the list. I'll get
to
you?
Okay.
I have him 19th.
Wow.
I do not trust him this year. I think the injuries have caught up to me psychologically. I'm sure he will rise up my board from here, but as of right now, he is just I'm not going to have him anywhere with this, on this list. So,
yeah, maybe I'm a bit too high, but one of the things about these offenses, like the McVay tree offenses, is they do tend to be like somewhat balanced, but they're also efficient. So, you're kind of getting like the Mixon stuff from Cook, but I think Cook is probably, I think Cook's more talented than Mixon. So if kind of everything goes right, Cook could really smash. Where Mixon, it feels like everything goes right, and he's like what you drafted.
Yeah, and I mean Cook was number 2 overall last year, so it's not like it's a crazy pick. It's just like it's probably just my own bias. I think the question mark between Mixon and Cook for me, I do have Mixon first, is that is the offense, is the Bengals going to turn into just a total, pass fest, or are they going to continue? Because last year they just did everything they could to be a running offense. If that continues, Mixon's got a lot of value there.
But it shouldn't continue.
I agree. I hope it doesn't. But yeah, my next actually before Mixon, I would take Mark Andrews, and that's definitely ahead of ADP with tight end premium. I mean, he's right there with Kelsey for me. Oh yeah, okay. So we're in agreement. I mean, I think he's not going in the first round in FFPC drafts yet, but I think he'll get there. I don't know how you cannot with how good he looked. So if Andrews is off the board, where would you go next?
This is like way ahead of ADP, but I'm gonna go Waller.
Okay, I had Waller. Whoa, I had Waller ahead of ADP, but you're way ahead of ADP. Okay, yeah, and
Yeah,
again, Waller and Andrews are right there, skill level, right? So
right. And
yeah,
my thing with the tight ends is like there's like really two tiers of tight ends where it's like Kelsey, Waller, Kittle, Andrews, probably Pitts from a skill level. I think, he's not there. He wasn't there as a rookie, but he'll probably get there this year. And like maybe Dallas Goddard, you could argue, where it's like they're like these rare human beings who can block and also be like a star level wide receiver, like star level efficiency.
right,
And everyone else is just like situation based.
yeah,
And so, like, if I can get one of these guys who's, you know, an elite talent, and tight end is also like fairly injury prone, is like a
hmm
position, which is obviously, it obviously makes any one of these guys more risky. But if you get one of them and then like two of the other top guys get hurt, you know, the
yeah,
remaining guys are going to just give you such a positional advantage.
yeah. And I think it's less injury prone for sure than running back. It's more like
It is,
receiver.
but it's still, yeah.
Yeah, but they're doing more blocking, I guess. The next guy I would actually take is Mixon. He's the next on my list. I would not be happy about it, but I would take him there.
I'll take AJ Brown.
Okay. And again, I had him ahead of ADP, but just a little behind you. So now I know if I want these guys, I'm going to draft with you. I gotta go really early. The next guy I take is Javante.
Nice, yeah.
I know it's a little early, but I love the talent, and I'm just at this point crossing my fingers. Melvin's gone.
Yeah, I have like in my list, basically like compared to ADP, like all the running backs are just like in the red, like I'm behind ADP on them. Javante is even, so
Okay, there you go.
that counts for being
Above
that for
ADP,
me.
yeah.
That's pretty high. Yeah,
hmm
um, I'll go Diggs.
Okay, and then I would go Devonte Adams.
Nice. I'm nervous about Adams. I think that mind meld
I do.
connection
I am
with
too. I mean, it's Derek Carr, but it's Devonte
yeah,
Adams. That's really tough.
it is. Yeah, and we did this with Hopkins 2 years ago. We're like, I don't know, the situation's not what we want, and then he smashed.
Right.
All right, I'll take Kyle Pitts as I just clean up tight ends.
Okay. See, and I had Pitts all the way down at 29. I'm way lower on him because of the Marcus Mariota situation, but I do
Right.
like the talent. I would go Debo next.
That's who I would have gone next too. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Who would be after Debo then?
I'll go Kamara,
Oh,
which I
okay.
don't like at all, but
Yeah, I'm lower on him too. I would go Tyreek Hill next.
nice. Okay. I'll go CD Lamb.
That was my next. All right. We're close on some of these guys. Then I would go see that's where Cook would have been. This is where Cook would have been for me. My next is DeAndre Swift.
Yep. I like that. I'll go George Kittle.
Okay.
Let's get these tight ends.
Going hard. And I had Kittle above ADP, but again, not that high. My next would be Nick Chubb.
All right. I'll go Leonard Fournette.
Oh, see, I was way ahead of ADP, and he was 2 away right here. I thought I was going to get him. All right, so that's good. And right ahead of Fournette, I have Barkley, so I would go Barkley there, end of the second.
Nice.
So just for reference, we're at pick 24 right now.
I'll go T Higgins.
Okay, I have 3 down. I would go DK Metcalf here, which I was surprised when I looked at the ADP. Metcalf is like down near the end of the third, which surprised me. Like last year, he was going into the second. I know he lost Wilson, but I don't know. I
feel like he could get traded, right? So that's like a pretty, that's a juicy out.
Yeah, I mean, would you take him around here, or would you wait?
I'd probably wait a bit. I mean, partly just because he's going later. So anytime I can get the discount, I want it.
Right. All right. Who'd be after that? You said Higgins, right? So he's gone.
Higgins, yeah.
No, I went Metcalf. So then,
then you go. So it's me again. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll go Aaron Jones.
Okay. And you took Kittle and Pitts already, right?
Yep.
All right. Aaron Jones is gone. I had him soon. I would go Mike Evans next.
Nice. I'll go Jalen Waddle.
Okay. He's 2 down for me. Right before him for me is Antonio Gibson, even though I don't really like him. I feel like he's potentially worth it.
All right. I'll go God, this is where it starts to get a little hard with the receivers.
I know
I'll go
these
Keenan
guys are
Allen.
really tough. Okay, yeah, and he was close for me. We're getting close to that end of the third round section where the dead zone starts, and I have some of these backs. I'm like, like I think next on my list I have Cam Akers. Again, Gibson and Akers I'm not excited about, but so if those two are gone, where would you go next?
I'll go DeAndre Hopkins.
And he was my next also. And then I would go Terry McLaurin, who I also am above ADP on.
All right, I'll go Jerry Jeudy.
Oh, he did not make my top 40. Okay. Why do you like Jeudy?
I just think the quarterback upgrade is massive. And I think Jeudy kind of got like treated like it wasn't going to happen for him. But I think so much of that is just a horrible situation. And not just in terms of the abysmal quarterback play, but a defense first team, a run heavy team.
Yeah.
Not a particularly creative passing offense. So like he's getting all the upgrades.
Yeah. With Hackett coming in, right? It should be a lot better.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I should probably be higher than him. I think so far I've been higher on Sutton than Jeudy, but it's probably a mistake.
No, I mean the market seems to be with you on that, and I like Sutton too. I thought that the market would be more hyped on Jeudy, but I think Jeudy should go over Sutton. But if the market like eventually decides like no, Sutton is the guy, I'll be taking Sutton and then taking my discount on Jeudy as well. Like I'm not gonna.
Right.
I think Sutton's a strong pick as well.
Okay. All right. Let's do two more picks here. Next, I would take Deontay.
Nice.
You can wrap us up with who would be your next guy that's still available.
I'll do James Conner.
Okay. And I had Conner 2 down. I have Elijah Mitchell 1 ahead of Conner. And since I just said his name and I'm way ahead of ADP, what do you think of Elijah Mitchell?
The next guy I would take after that would be Breece Hall.
Okay. Yeah. And he's right there for me too.
Yeah.
I'm just torn. I'm really conflicted with those guys because I feel like Elijah Mitchell has potential to really go off this year without much competition. And, 49ers like to run it and just not knowing where Breece Hall is going to land. But what do you think about Mitchell's prospects?
Mitchell makes me nervous just because it feels like inertia. Like you just need everything to stay the same. It's like where I don't know. There's like usually more chaos than that. Like maybe Sermon gets like a little bit more in with the coaching staff after completely bombing his rookie year, with a full off season or something.
Right.
So we saw Ayuk recover from the doghouse. Maybe Sermon can a bit.
Yeah, I have such a hard time drafting 49ers because of the way Shanahan does stuff, man.
I know.
Just you're gone. You're dead to me. And then it's like, what?
Right.
Dude's good.
And part of the appeal for me for Mitchell last year was, he was like he was one of the guys I liked as a flyer. Actually,
he was free.
He was free. Me and Leone actually cut him in a dynasty league, which is like one of the saddest things.
That hurts.
But there were a lot of leagues where I was able to scoop him up very cheaply. And at the time, the argument's like, look, there's not that much separating him from Trey Sermon. Like their profiles are very similar. Really, just the draft position is the only major difference. But that's still true. Like he's still like he had a much stronger. The rookie year obviously counts for a lot when you're trying to evaluate what happens next. But he's not that different of a player from Sermon. If Sermon kind of gets it together, they could pretty easily be in a committee. So I don't. Yeah, he looked good last year, but I don't think he's like a kind of superstar talent or anything.
Yeah, I'm with you. Well, that was very fun, man. Very interesting. Thank you for taking the time to do that, and I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. Do you want to tell the listeners before we close out where they can find you and your work?
Yeah, NBC Sports Edge. We've got this week, actually today, I put out my my part 2 of my wide receiver rookie ranks. Part 1 came out a couple days ago, going through like all the analytical profiles for these guys. Part 3 will be out tomorrow. I'm going to have articles on the quarterbacks, the running backs, the tight ends coming as well. And then also check out a good football show. Actually at 4:00 today, I will be on with Hayden Winks and Ryan McDowell. We're talking rookie risers and fallers. Yeah,
Very cool.
and rolling. I'm hosting a show on a Good Football Show, the Thursday show. I'm hosting that in the off season. So lots of
Very
good
cool.
guests rolling through.
Yeah, you're doing a great job with that. It's a great show. If you haven't checked it out, definitely listen to that. For our listeners, please help the podcast out. Help keep going without ads by giving us a rating and review. Share the pod with others, and you can support the pod over at Anchor. It would mean a lot. Thanks so much for listening. For Pat Kerrane, I'm Kevin Scott. We will see you next time.